Hello again, and welcome to Professional Development 3 for MgUE. My name is Stephen Smith. I'm the NASA Education Specialist here at Johnson Space Center. And I'll be talking to you tonight about microgravity activities. So for your professional development for this segment, this is going to be a really low-tech kind of thing, and I'm just going to talk to you about some of the possible pitfalls of the activities that we're suggesting, as well as to give you some other options that maybe aren't in the activity roster and ways that you can do it a little simpler, a little cleaner, that sort of thing, although I know with the kids messy is fun. Now, I've gotten to see some of the other videos, and standing next to my friend Mike McGlone, who will be your guide through the actual on-site portion of the MgUE, I just wanted to put out a disclaimer that he was not sitting down, nor was I standing on anything. Our height is a little bit disparate. Now, I might claim that I'm completely average, of course, and he's just freakishly small, but he would probably say it the other way around. But anyway, so we have a couple of different activities that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about recreations of things that NASA uses on a large scale that you can do on a small scale in your classroom. Those three activities that involve the engineering design are the PABF, like the precision air-bearing floor that we're going to be using here. I'm going to show you a way that you can create one in your classroom on a small scale. Drop towers, so we have gigantic drop towers. There's ones that the fall is several seconds, and they can actually do research on microgravity for just a few seconds. There's one in Japan, I believe, it was an old mine shaft, and it's just ridiculously deep. Obviously, you're not going to have access to that in your classroom, but there's some things that you can do to show short-term free fall in your classroom using technology that's readily available to you. The last one is to create an accelerometer. I'm going to show you some ways to do that and give you some tips on using the one that we'll provide the instructions for in your resources in the badge group. But I'm going to give you some kind of hints and things that we found that worked well and help you avoid some pitfalls that we ran into. The last one is we're going to talk about creating a mission patch. And then your assignment will be to do one of these things in your classroom and then upload some sort of evidence to show us student work and what your students came up with for that. So first and foremost, let's do the precision air-bearing floor. We're going to use a pegboard to do that, and it's some pretty high-tech stuff. So let me show you some of the materials you need and talk about why we need those things. So the first thing you need is some sort of block or spacer. We're using some super high-tech NASA 2x4s here, well rounded on the sides. I'm going to set them up here, trying to remember where the camera angles are. Oh, let's scoot some stuff out of the way here. Then you also need the super high-tech NASA fan. You can actually use two fans. You want them facing up. Something to think about as well is to have the turn on switch button facing you in some way so you don't have to reach under or around. So we'll just set that up right here. And finally, a pegboard. Now, this is a regular pegboard that you could find in any hardware store that you might use to put up tools on your wall or something like that. I'm going to show you the darker side because that looks better on camera. And I'll set it here like that. Now, the precision air-bearing floor works just like an air hockey table, which is what we're creating here, but it's the opposite. So the object that's on the floor is actually creating the air. Here, we're going to blow the air up from the bottom. So again, you can see even with this size, I could actually have a second fan there to create a bigger workspace. But for what we're doing right now, I just used one. And a box fan works best, by the way. So I'm going to show you using a paper plate, or this is a styrofoam plate here. We might get a little zoom in here, so it'll be awesome. There you go. Now, I'm going to turn it on to full speed here, and I probably won't talk while that's going on because there's a lot of noise, even though this is a relatively quiet fan. But I want to show you the magic of microgravity simulation. Whoa, look at that, there it goes. So now your students could do, some really cool things. They could add weights into this plate here and figure out the optimal weight that the fan can carry. If you put a piece of paper on there, that might be too light and it would fly away. But I wouldn't give my students too much of that information. Let them experiment. Make that part of the design and have them create a vehicle that would operate on there. Now, we saw it this way. Let's see if there's any difference when I turn it the other way. Here's where we started. What happens if I do this? Have your students and once again, have your students test it and see, is there a difference between having more of the surface area down or the surface area around and giving you this concave space? Do those things make a difference? That could be a part of your design challenge. Don't give them the answers. Let them figure this stuff out. That's part of the process. And chances are they'll come up with something that you may have never thought of before. And how many plates can they put together? And can they carry even more weight? And does the weight ratio go up exponentially, or does it move in a direct ratio with how many plates you have, and that sort of thing? Or measure the surface area versus weight. There's lots of things you can do with this exercise. Let me move this out of the way. One of the reasons that I came to NASA, one of the things that got me in here, I was a classroom teacher for 20 years, and I worked in school systems that were very low SES schools. And so I'm sure some of you may be in schools where resources aren't a problem. And if you want to buy robotics, you just buy robotics. But there are some of us who worked in schools where that's not the case. And so coming up with things like this to use, like really simple things you might have around, can be really handy. So you can still do these STEM exercises. You can still do all of these things, but not have to worry about spending a lot of money to do it. So STEM engagement is not limited by budget all the time. It's, a lot of it is your ingenuity. I'm trying to get that off the screen. And it's coming back. Oh my gosh. It's my magnetic personality. I just can't get things away. It's here. The second thing we're going to talk about is the drop towers. Now, drop towers are huge and expensive, but you can create free fall in a controlled environment in your classroom. The one that I'm going to show you today is actually called falling water, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to show you that you don't have to have water, because water can be messy. Water can get everywhere. So, and right now we're in this wonderful space, and I'm surrounded by cords and switches and circuits, and if I spilled water right here, we would all die. Or we'd ruin the equipment, and then they'd just kill us. So that's a whole other thing. So what I'm going to show you is just using a cup. Again, it calls for like a cookie sheet, and so if you have one of those home, great. If not, you can just use this as a plexiglass clipboard. Pick that up later. This is a plexiglass clipboard, and you can use any kind of cup. So there's the regular cups, styrofoam cups, little Dixie cups. Those of you who have recently been in college probably still have some of those red Solo cups around. Those also work. But the basic idea is you take a cup, and this works with water as well, and it's interesting with water. But if you take the cup like this, you put it right side up, and then flip the whole thing over. I'm going to use the clear one so you can see the stuff inside. Now, if I just slowly pull this out, what's going to happen to the paper clips? Right. I'm going to pretend you answered. Do you love it when the kid shows you that? I always wanted to be that guy. So if I just pull this out like this, gravity takes over, and all my clips fall out. Pretty simple. So we know that gravity is acting on it. Well, in the ISS, in the International Space Station, they are experiencing the effects of gravity, but they're in free fall. And the things that are in the ISS are falling at the same speed they are. So I can simulate that really simply with this here. Now, just a quick tip. The kids' fancy schmancy phones, the iPhones, have the ability to do slow motion video. So I suggest that you get one of those, or one of your kids that has one of those, and have them film this so you can see it in slow motion. So all you do is you put it over to the edge just like that, and then we're going to do that old magic trick where you pull the tablecloth. Thank you. My lovely assistant helping. Pull the tablecloth up, but leave the stuff there. So watch really carefully. Can we zoom in on this one? Okay, so pay attention to what happens to the cup in relation to the paper clips. Okay, 1, 2, 3. That was probably a little bit hard to see, but again, if we could go back in slow motion, you'd be able to see that the paper clips fell at the same speed as the cup. So if you were in the cup, it would look like they were in 0G. And that's microgravity. That's exactly what it is. You can create a longer span of free fall by just having it higher or lower. Depending on your filming abilities, you can capture that for a longer or shorter period of time. But that's a really simple way to do it. There's a million different things that you use. I use paper clips for the mess. You can use water. You could use sand. Whatever you put in there, as long as you can get them to fall all together by whipping that thing out, they're going to fall all together, and you have a wonderful example of microgravity at work. The last of the actual engineering type things we're going to look at is the accelerometer. So what the accelerometer is doing is it's measuring the change in gravity's effect given speed, velocity, those change in direction, those sort of things. What you're really seeing is the same thing that I would see if I was using one of these spring scales. So if I had something like a bunch of washers, for example, and I put them on the scale, the weight of these things is going to change in a measurable way. And I can watch the spring being pulled farther and farther, and this is going to go down. This is the idea behind the accelerometer. So you'll notice, you see how it's standing still. Now if I move it up, try it one more time. Watch the little dial there when I move it. So as you saw, hopefully very briefly before I threw things all over the floor, excuse me, it's almost like I was going to do a puppet show there, huh? Anyway, this moves in relation. When I move this up, that stays still for a second. That's one of those Newtonian laws called inertia. Now, the activity on the in the guide talks about using lead weights or something like that. Now, if you teach in a very rural area like I did, a lot of the kids are going to have access to those lead weights. A lot of fisher persons probably have that sort of thing. I do not. I am not a fisher person. I feel bad about yanking the poor fish out of their homes by their face. I don't know. It's a thing. But you don't have to have those. Anything that has weight that you can tie. These giant washers are a really good thing. They're really heavy. But you want something that's going to have enough weight that when you put them on the rubber band, they're going to give you a little stretch there. It's going to pull that rubber band down, so that when you move it, it's going to. So all you have to do when you're creating your graduation to say, you know, this is 1G, this is 2Gs, this is 3Gs, is you create that much more weight. So 1G is what we have right now. There's 4 washers on there. If I put 8 washers on there, now where that mark is going to be is 2G, because this is twice the weight, twice the gravity. And wherever this pulls down to, that would show me the 2G. If I put 4 more on there, that'd be 3G, and so on and so forth. And then you're just going to do the opposite spaces going up for negative G. So when you're falling, there's a negative G. There it is again. You have to make that noise, by the way. When you're negative G, you have to go, That's the way we know. A lot of people don't know that. That's the astronauts do that. When they're on there, they go, and we say, okay, he's a negative G. I totally made that up. That is not a real thing. Disclaimer. Also, when you're building the accelerometer itself, if you use the version that we're providing for you, you're going to want to support that. Even if you make it out of good, heavy cardstock, the weights that you put in there in order to have enough weight to really see a movement and a difference, you can use wood skewers, you can use popsicle sticks, you can use sometimes just reinforcing it with some really good sturdy duct tape will really help in keeping the thing from collapsing on itself. As we built them before, that was a problem that we ran into pretty frequently. The last thing I want to show you is the mission patches. Now, the idea of the mission patch is for you to create a patch in every one of our missions that the astronauts go on. The astronauts themselves create a patch. Here's an example. I'll show you some close-ups in just a second of some others. But they have a patch that they wear, and that it's their mission. And the names of the astronauts are usually around the outside, and then they have pictures. They have pictures on there that kind of tell you a little bit about their mission. Most of the ISS missions, they're really kind of doing a lot of the same things. So they show the ISS, but they'll usually have flags for the countries of the different people who are represented on there. And then just if there's something special that they're doing, if there's something interesting or different, they'll usually include that in there. So think about that when you're making your patch. Here's some examples down here. So this one here is an actual mission patch. This was for one of the ISS missions, and they wanted to let you know that they went up on the Soyuz rocket. So there's the picture of the Soyuz rocket right there. And of course, they're going around the Earth, so they've got that. They're on the ISS, and there's that. And then they've got their names all there for you to see. These are some examples of ones that were made by groups that came here for challenges here on at Johnson Space Center. So this is from MicroG Next, or MicroGX, I think. They actually got to fly on the Vomit Comet. And so they have a picture of the Vomit Comet right there. Luckily, they did not put pictures of the vomit itself on there. That would have been disgusting. But they put the names of the different people who were involved, and the year that they were there, and the logo of what they did. And here's another one. So this was the SGA Satellite Sleuths, is what they called themselves. So there's their sleuth right there, which is part of their team name, Satellite Sleuths. And they came to JSC, Texas, April of 2017, and they were at NASA MgUE. So what we want you to put on yours, is some representation of your school colors, your school mascot, something like that, and then something that tells us a little bit about your sled design. Your specific sled that you designed as a team, have something on your patch that tells us a little about that, as well as maybe the people who put that together, and a lot of those design elements I'll leave up to you. So you have 4 options. Pegboard, which represents the PABF itself, the drop tower, or falling water exerciser, or something that you come up with on your own for some sort of free fall event, an accelerometer, or the NASA MgUE mission patch that you create with your students. Do the activity with your students, upload the evidence from your students' work, and that will be the evidence that we're looking for this particular PD. If you have any questions as you go along, you can always reach out to us on Brightspace, or you can email us. Either one of those works. And I look forward to actually seeing you in person. We have one more PD after this. We're going to talk about NASA missions themselves. And I will magically go back to the outfit I had on in, in videos 1 and 2 for that. It's the magic of NASA video. That's what it is. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.